Hi, and welcome to O3 Webinar Data Series. Today's webinar is part of a three-part series all about the importance of data to support advanced work packaging. Today's event will cover creating an AWP data strategy. We're excited to be joined by one of O3's professional service partners, Insight AWP. So before we get started, let's take a minute to review this safety moment. It's all about being prepared for severe storms. As we enter the spring, most of us will be entering storm season, and knowing what to do can greatly help ensure your safety and reduce your risk for injury or other damage. So a few key tips here to keep in mind is to develop and practice an evacuation plan ahead of a severe weather event. Include a plan for pets and add any transportation routes and destinations in the plan. Prepare an emergency supplies kit for both family members and pets ahead of time to take with you. Be prepared to evacuate when authorities tell you to do so. Very important is to always stay out of floodwaters if possible, and do not drive into flooded areas. Even water only several inches deep can be very dangerous. And it's always safe to assume fallen power lines are energized, so stay away from the area and report any down lines to authorities immediately. And unplug appliances and other electrical items such as computers, televisions, and anything else, just to prevent damage from surges caused by lightning strikes. And if you are evacuated, do not return to your home until local authorities say it's safe. And there's two things you can do to plan out of the home in case of an emergency, and that's to clear your driveway and walk and your front sidewalk of ice and snow, and this will help provide easy access to your home. Make sure your house number can be seen from the street, and if you need help, firefighters will be able to find you. So that is it for this safety moment, and with that, we'll jump into the agenda here for today. And we'll start with some introductions, then we're going to cover challenges with data, the value of centralized data, data standardization, using data to support AWP, visualizing your data, Insight AWP plus O3 plus you, some key takeaways, and then we'll have a brief Q&A session following the presentations. But before we get started, here's a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, just a reminder to submit those using the panel and GoToWebinar, or you can use the chat feature as well. And a copy of the presentation slides and a link to the recording will be sent to you within a few days.
Point on your emergency preparations there. I'm in Houston, and I know we look like a bunch of sissies last week, but you know what? I spent 15 years in Canada and it was never that bad. So we had a tough time here last week. If you are prepared for the cold, it is wholly different from if you're not prepared. So anyway, good safety topic.
Yeah, always a timely safety topic, no matter where you are really in the world. So good things to keep in mind. So yes, as a reminder, this will be sent to you. This is being recorded, so you will get a copy of this as well as the presentation slides. So with that, I'll introduce our speakers. So today we've got Jeff Ryan, and he is a Texas-based Canadian from Australia. Jeff is a project management professional who has been involved in over 50 mega projects using the principles of AWP to deliver successful outcomes. He's the author of 2 books on AWP and is helping the industry make the leap from WorkFace Planning to AWP. And then we've got Mandy Coker from O3, and she's the VP of Education and Engagement. She has nearly 20 years experience in emerging technology education and has been in industrial construction for 8 years, with 5 years devoted specifically to AWP. Mandy is part of the AWP leadership team for CII and provides strategic guidance for AWP conferences across the globe.
What's going on?
Hey.
And so with that, Jeff, would you like to give a high-level overview of Insight AWP?
Sure. Thank you very much, Tori. So for those, I know a whole bunch of people on the call, so hi to all the people that I know. We've been in business for about 15 years now. We are a full-service AWP project management company. We provide project management professionals that help organizations apply advanced work packaging, workface planning, and information management on small cap, mega, and we've been involved in some giga projects. So anyway, this is what we do. This is what we know. This is what we're going to talk about today. This is how we do it, and hopefully you'll get something from that to take away today. Thank you, Terry.
And Mandy, would you please give a high-level overview of O3?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So O3 Solutions is a modern web-based platform for industrial construction and is one of the only true software solutions that was purpose-built to support advanced work packaging. We have many solutions built specifically to meet you where you are in your AWP journey and wherever you are in your construction project, regardless of the phase. Our platform is scalable and can be used on small to mega and giga projects, similar to what Jeff just mentioned. So we do serve a wide variety of clients. And of course, we have a strong ability to track and manage data, which is what we're going to dig into a little bit more today. So I'll go ahead and dive in. So first, let's talk about creating an AWP data strategy. Insight AWP is part of O3's partner network, and we're super excited to talk today about how some of the work our two companies have been doing together has really progressed in this field. Insight is in the business of implementing work packaging in the field, and they're dependent on good quality software to manage their process, which relies, of course, on good quality data. Jeff and his team help project teams define the data requirements needed to support healthy AWP program. And then O3 leverages that well-organized data to populate our software and drive users to take action. So Jeff, I will turn it over to you to get started on your portion of today's presentation.
Thanks, Mandy. Thank you, Terry. Hey, so you know that what you just said there, Mandy, is actually is probably a really good takeaway, and that is that if you're, for the listeners, if you are going into the business of AWP, you are going to need a information management strategy, and you're going to need to understand that this we have a process which is building packages and making things effective in the field, but that a fuel for that is data, and you need a strategy for how you're going to get the data, how you're going to store it, how you're going to use it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I guess one of the key takeaways today is just go there and have a strategy to address this. So you guys will be familiar with this model. The CII surfboard model has been around for a long time. We have adapted it a little bit. You can see that there's a green portion under the two surfboards that we have labeled information management. And we think of information management as the glue that really holds this thing together. You know, that if you want to transition from data publishers to data users, then you need to think about that holistic use of data, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And of course, talk about our partnership with O3 and how well that's working, because we are not in the business of software. We're in the business of making AWP work, and we rely heavily on good quality software like O3. Next slide, please, Tori. Thank you. So, so some of the issues we'll talk about today are just basically the menu, if you like, of what you should be thinking about when you get into the business of data management. So, getting it, you know, how do you get data? Think of it as or thinking about it as a product of or part of what we buy when we purchase things. Getting it in the right format, of course, so that you can use it. Overshorts and damages is a great way to start thinking about data. You know that in a normal warehouse environment, the guy at the front gate looks at a load that comes in and he checks it to see if there's any OS&Ds. And if there are, it gets turned around and shipped back to the supplier, and they say, okay, we're not taking it because it's not up to our quality standards. Well, we can apply the same principles to data. And that is that's really important strategy. Is data is as important as a component, because, and the proof of that is, if you have a spool of pipe and you don't know you've got it, you don't have it. So the data that tells us that we've got it and what it is and where we laid it down is as important as the component. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit about data warehousing as we walk through this. So storing the data, that's essentially, we've got a series of projects now running on the principles of a data warehouse, where we have a centralized storage place for data. So there's all sorts of benefits to that, and we'll talk about that in a couple of slides. Once you have all of that data in one place, you can also manage access to it, which is really cool. So one of the issues that I'm sure you guys have all suffered on projects is, okay, we've got that information, but it's behind a firewall on somebody else's server, somebody else's system, came to you as a PDF. There's all sorts of roadblocks to actually getting access to being able to use data. So if you have a data strategy, you have to address that. And then using it. And of course, one of the things we're going to talk about here is how we, if you like, lay the groundwork for O3. And O3 is a great tool to absorb that data and make it a consumable, if you like, or edible for the end user. So one of the things that, of course, that whole strategy of having one source of data is that you get a single source of truth too. So, you know, there's only one place to go for data. There's only one source of data. This is it. And if the data's not right, then you clean up the data. But it's not like varying stories that you would normally get on a project. And of course, at the end of that, how do you boil that down into meaningful reports? So, of course, if you have good quality data and you have an organized fashion for how you're going to store it and use it and then make it available to the project, you can then boil that down into dashboards that allow people to make decisions. And that's a really important part of the end product. Next slide, please, Tori. So let's have a little look at some of the details. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to go through the details on this. This is just a sample of a spreadsheet that we use. Simple enough. It's in Excel. I just wanted to talk about where your journey starts. And so we would typically start a project in a format like this. On the right side, we start where we say, okay, what data do we need? What are the consumers of data look like? You know, what information are we going to mine 2 years from now? What do we need to know? You know, a simple example of that is, you know, a components tied to turnover systems, because we know that one day we're going to have to figure that out. We're going to have to figure out what's in this turnover system. And of course, when you start to talk to QA and material management, procurement, construction, all of those folks have data needs. So you need to map that. So that's essentially what we did here. Is on the left, we've got a whole list of the sort of components we could have. And on the right, we've got, okay, this is the data, or there is an element of this data that is required by this end user. Then you bring those together in the green portion of the spreadsheet and you say, okay, so if we need it and we need it in this format, where are we going to get it from? And of course, that's a huge question. A lot of that stuff comes from the 3D model. A whole pile of it doesn't. A whole pile of it comes in 2D format or from the fabricators or from the vendors. But importantly, at the start of the project, you need to identify where you think you're going to get it from. And then, of course, flush that out, make sure it's in a contract, make sure you can actually get it. So this essentially becomes the roadmap for the data that you require. And you know, using Stephen Covey logic, you know, start with the end in mind. What data do you need 2 years from now? What questions are you going to ask? What reports are you going to have to answer? And then work your way backwards from there into, okay, this is the data we're going to require. Next slide, please, Tori. So let me talk to you about a data warehouse. And you know that a simple way to think of this is every app that's on your phone probably has a data warehouse of some sort. So all of those apps pull data from reliable, stable environments. So all of that data, or somebody has organized that data so that it's in one place and somebody has access to it. That's all this is. It's not rocket science. It is essentially saying we should have one place of data, it should all live there. We can have a single common pool of data, which is really cool. The second point here is talking about a gatekeeper. So think about that guy at the gate of the warehouse. You know, essentially somebody standing at the gate of the data warehouse saying, receiving data, checking it to see that it's good quality, that it's up to our standards for quality control, and then storing it in the warehouse, and then of course providing access. So the fourth point here, we talk about a project cloud. SharePoint is the same thing. You know, it's basically just, if you're going to have a data warehouse and you're going to put all the project data there, then part of why we're doing that is so everybody has access to it. So you need to think about what does that look like. I know that the applications where we're using cloud or SharePoint, there's a couple of really good other benefits, like super secure. It is the most secure environment you can imagine for data. You also have a record of everybody who accessed data, everybody who took data. So you have a complete record of who's using it and who's not using it. So anyway, so really good, if you like, a management structure for how you're going to address data. So of course, once you have all that data in one place, you also have the opportunity to pull reports from that. And this next bullet talking about. Now let me just talk about what it takes to make that work. So essentially, when we do this, we have the software is just off-the-shelf software. We buy cloud space from Azure or any of the other providers, and we get a SQL database. We put the SQL database there, and we organize it so that all the data has sort of common threads. You know, the center of our universe is the CWP. So every piece of data has to somehow be linked to a CWP. And then you can sort the data that way. Now, it's way more complex than that, but you get the idea that you need a map for how you're going to store data. That's about it. So you don't need a program to make this work. You just need people that can make it work. So you need data people. So you need an information manager, sort of someone to give you the overall design. You need analysts, of course, to be able to pull data, and you need a data engineer, somebody who's going to build that structure of the SQL database. Next slide, please, Tori. Thank you. So what are we trying to achieve is the next question. So, of course, what we're trying to achieve is improve productivity, because we're trying to reduce the cost and schedule of projects. We're trying to increase the quality and the amount of safety on a project. And we do that, we know that we can do that by providing work packages to foremen. So at the end of all of this data conversation, when we try to figure out what we're trying to do, we're not trying to build a warehouse, we're not trying to get software to work, we're not trying to get engineering organized. We're doing all of that for this benefit or for this purpose. So this gives you, if you like, a target for what your data is supposed to do at the end of the day. And that's what this diagram is about. You know, the center of the world for data, and the, if you like, the customer at the end of all of this data is the WorkFace planner. That if the data gets to that guy and he uses it to build work packages, and we use those work packages to get work done, and we progress work effectively, we win. So that's really the purpose of data. So if you want to, so the measure of good quality data system is the foreman has a package. Foreman has a package and he's executing work that we know that can get done. So anyway, so just keep that in mind when we're creating data models, and that will help you focus on what data do we need and how we're going to use it. Next slide, please, Tori. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is just sort of pose some questions for you. So I want to give you some takeaways to start thinking about your own data model. So here's some things that you'll need to be thinking about if you're going to go down this road. Think about work breakdown structure, and if you like, think about the words, work breakdown structure. It's not a cost breakdown structure, it's not a schedule breakdown structure, it's not about engineering or procurement, it's about work. So coming back to that focus on the foreman, the package, getting work done, if your work breakdown structure is based on how you want to do work, and you use that in every other department, now you've got a common theme of how everything aligns. So really important that you need one work breakdown structure, and it needs to be targeting how you're going to do work in the field. So if you're going to get data, you're going to have to ask for it. So that's the second point here is, are you thinking about data as a deliverable? Is it a line item on your PO that says, hey, you know, you're not getting paid until this line item is satisfied, and that line item says, we want data, we want it in this format. That's where you need to. That's where your head needs to be in the world of in stepping into this digital world of data management. Do you know what data AWP requires? So a great place to start there is to O3. You know, that O3, if you ask them, they'll give you a shopping list. They'll say, hey, this is all the data we need. Right? And that's a great starting place, because that's the sort of things that they know that they need in order to operate the software. have you identified which software you're going to use? So, that's really important. We've done these without software. You just need a whole pile more people. And I promise you, people are way more expensive than software. So you're better off to go down the road of software. And of course, the last point here is this is an upfront activity. You need to, on day one, you need to be thinking about how we're going to create data and how we're going to use it. You're going to need people to do that. You're going to need software. You're going to need servers. You're going to need some investment up front. So be thinking about how you're going to package that. Next slide, please, Tori. Okay, and with that, let's talk about how you use that data. So, of course, that's the cue for Mandy to tell us a little bit about O3. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jeff. So really appreciate, your side of the story here. So, and I'd love to take it from here. So now that Jeff has shared with you how he gets information organized and centralized, I'd like to share with you some ways that O3 can use that data to support AWP. So as a software provider, we've witnessed firsthand the benefits of having a data strategy in place to support advanced work packaging. First, there's accessibility. When data is managed in multiple sources, there may be issues with people not having access to an application or a file that they need. Maybe the engineering team has the status of documents stored in an Excel spreadsheet that no one outside of the engineering team has access to. Or a planner may need to know if a material is available for a work package, but doesn't have access to the materials management software. Since O3 is a cloud-based application and there's no limit on the amount of users, this data can be available anytime without having to rely on anyone else to provide it. A second benefit is one that often isn't known until the data is actually loaded into the software, and that's data accuracy. When data is visible in one platform, it will be compared across all of the sources, which makes inaccuracies or inconsistencies become obvious. By having data in O3, these inconsistencies, such as a difference in nomenclatures or dates not lining up, will be highlighted. And discovering those gaps in data early is a good thing. It's best to find that out early on. And the third benefit is creating automation and reporting based on relationships between data from different sources. A single system may show you a list of documents or drawings that are associated with the work package, but O3 goes a step farther, and we provide notifications based on data that's currently available, such as if a document is not complete and the planned start date of a work package is only a few weeks away, O3 will put a flag in place and let someone know that the notification, or have a notification in the system to let you know that data is not available and you may need to go find out where that is. O3 offers this and many other types of relationships that can be used to create automatically and clear constraints without any changes to the current process that you use. So how does O3 consume that data? Our client success team works with each project or facility to understand the type of data sources needed to support where you are in your AWP journey. If you're still relatively new to AWP, you may only want to connect a few sources, such as the materials management system or a schedule, and maybe a couple of those Excel spreadsheets. But as your AWP program matures, O3 can work with you to support a holistic data management strategy. Jeff talked earlier about how he's helped projects set up a project cloud and a data warehouse. We can also work with an existing data lake or a structure that your organization may already have in place. Data can be consumed in O3 in a variety of ways. First, there's our proprietary API, but we also have webhooks and flat file imports, and we use a combination of these. So our advice, similar to the advice that Jeff mentioned earlier, and also how AWP message, is to begin with the end in mind and implement a crawl, walk, run plan for your data strategy. Start off with imports of the data using the existing format you have to understand the data that you already have in place. Then set expectations for exchange, such as fields format and frequency, and establish reporting to track the data health and accuracy. And then move to maybe semi-automated or automated integrations or API integrations as your comfort level with the data exchange increases. Having RESTful APIs and webhooks allows administrators to interface and connect more easily during that run phase. And one thing that we need to note, The two of us, the two companies that you have here, O3 and Insight, have the experience and battle scars that we can share with you to give recommendation and guidance along your journey. We have seen it all as we've worked with our global clients and different project types and sizes. Just for an example, we discovered some of our international companies use semicolons to separate data instead of commas in CSV files. O3 was easily configured to support this particular use case, as well as commas, semicolons, and any other separators you may come up with. If you've got the data, we can meet you where you are. I'll start by showing you how O3 can support your AWP data strategy from the very beginning. It's a critical first step to understand the data that you have and understand if you have all that data that you need. O3 has a default data management dashboard to help you visualize if data is flowing into the platform. The dashboard is configured to know what systems are being used on the project and what data is required from those systems. O3 automatically raises a flag when the necessary data isn't in place and helps information managers know which areas they need to focus on. And then he or she can assign follow-up to actions and resolve any issues as needed. The result of all these data connections is work packages that are ready to go. It is not about pretty dashboards. It's about giving you an easy to understand visual representation of your data so you can make decisions faster with up-to-date information. This is an example of how O3 uses data to show you if a package is ready to be released to the field. The items in green are ready. The items in yellow are still waiting for issues to be resolved, such as a drawing that still needs to be finalized or a material that has not yet arrived. And the items in red are critical. A package may need to be released in the next 2 weeks based on your path of construction, but we still may not have the material on site. You can click into that red item, get details about what's holding up the work, and assign a task directly to a person with a priority and a due date to make sure that package can be released in time. This view can be used by owners, project managers, contractors, suppliers, really anyone who owns a constraint on the project. With O3's unlimited user data model, you can provide guest access to any company or team so they can provide the updates directly in the system as they need to. And with the configurable roles and permissions set, you can actually ensure that they only see the data that pertains to their particular scope of the project. So in this next example, O3 uses data connections to highlight in the 3D model packages that are available for release and packages that are still waiting to be cleared. Showing this directly in a model can help you see specific work areas and available work packages in that area to help you plan your work accordingly. You can also slice and dice the data any way you want. It could be by work area, work package type, discipline, component type, you name it, we can dive into it. You can zoom into any area and click to see a component or work package details. And again, all of this information helps you take action right away. If you see a work package you want to include in your plan, but it's still constrained, you can drill down to that particular AWP and assign the constraint to a person or leave a comment directly in the system that will notify the owner that they have an action item to address. As the constraints are cleared, you will get notified via email and the status in the model will update automatically to let you know that you're now good to go. And finally, with role-specific dashboards, making critical decisions has really never been easier or more data-driven. Contractors can see, oh, there we are. So contractors can see their specific scope of the project and track their progress. Construction managers and project managers can see the overall health of a project. They can see if they're on schedule, if AWP best practices are being followed, and how each team is performing. And the leadership team can see high-level reporting in a red, yellow, green stoplight fashion, so they can focus only on the areas that need their attention and not leaf through those 100-page reports with a fine-tooth comb to attempt to identify problems. Cross-project reporting is also available so owners or EPC firms can see at a glance how each of their projects is progressing in their entire portfolio. So now you've heard how Jeff and his team can help you get your data strategy in place and organize your data. And you've seen how O3 can leverage that data to help you visualize progress and report on your performance. Now I'd like to share with you the value of our combined teams to help you support your project. So you've all seen this people, process, technology diagram before, but I wanted to kind of dive in and show how we really come together to bring this picture to life. So both O3 and Insight AWP have worked with owners, EPCs, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers to create a well-rounded plan to support your project or facility. Insight AWP acts as an advisor on how to create an effective information management strategy. They identify any gaps in the data, and they work with you to find the sources and data publishers to support AWP. They can also provide subject matter experts and support staff on site if needed. O3 then uses all of that structured data to provide powerful reports, dashboards, and data visualizations to empower people on the ground to solve the problem in real time, and helps you monitor the progress and performance of your project or portfolio. Now, it's important to remember, O3 and Insight do not create the data. The project team and all of the companies involved are the original creators of that data. It's imperative that you become the third piece and get involved in the data strategy. We're here to help, but data is not something that can be 100% outsourced. The good news is we've conquered these data challenges before. Nothing is insurmountable, but it does take experience, leadership, and effort. And the combined partnership of O3 and Insight AWP helps you establish an effective information strategy, supports the work process through each phase and process step, and ensures you follow AWP best practices, which drives visibility and accountability for your overall program. So I'll wrap it up. Just to recap, there are a few things we'd like for you to take away from today's presentation. First, standardizing data is a critical step to your AWP journey. Software acts as a truth serum for your data. Once you can visualize the information, you can more easily identify any problem areas, and the earlier you know about them, the better. It's never too early to start your data strategy. Even if you only get started with 1 or 2 connections, it makes a huge difference in your program. Having one view of all AWP data provides many benefits. Just some of those include resolving accuracy, access, and relationship issues, and any roadblocks that might be holding up your work. Automation reduces errors and helps you take action quicker. Let the technology and tools do the heavy lifting, and instead focus your energy on making decisions and taking those actions. And most importantly, make decisions based on data, not hunches. Standardizing the way work packages are created, the way progress is reported, and the way updates are tracked will help you increase productivity, reduce costs, and improve the quality and safety of your work. So I hope that you've enjoyed both of our presentations today. And with that, I will turn it over to Tori to moderate any questions that may have come in.
Yeah,
Good job,
thank you, Mandy, for that. So we had a few questions come in. This first one says CII released digital threads to support AWP. How does that factor into an AWP information management strategy?
Yeah, you're just like us. So both Insight AWP and O3 are pretty involved with CII and definitely understand the importance of the digital threads. So a digital thread is a flow of information that connects systems. And both of our companies have worked with our clients to identify which data do you need and how the data needs to flow between the systems. And we also have experience actually putting those digital data threads to work. So something that we've already kind of taken in and consumed and been able to include in the projects that we've worked on.
Great. And then they've got another question here. It says, how can I convince my company that we need to get started as early as feed?
Maybe I'll
I
take
think
that
that's
one.
you.
Okay. Well, you know that we've been talking about this for 20 years about investing in the start of projects, so that at the end of the project, when you have really no control over the project, that we have the right direction and the right infrastructure. Well, this is how it happens. You make the investment and you do this stuff up front. Anybody that's been on any of these projects knows that if you arrive at, and construction is underway and somebody says you want them, they want their data organized, you've missed that boat. You're not catching that. So the only place to get on top of data is at the start of the project. Convincing your management to do that, basically they need to drink this Kool-Aid and understand that AWP does work. And there's piles of evidence out there that it does. But the rules are, you got to do it from day one. And everybody that's done it knows that.
Yeah, I think there's a significant amount of ROI that can be demonstrated to the early. Yep. So if you want to start understanding what your return on investment is, especially as you go throughout the phases, there's data out there that supports the theory that the earlier you get started, the better.
Yep.
Okay. And then we've got another one here. It says, what if my project has already awarded the contract but didn't include data requirements?
Okay, so we have lived this world, and well, you've got just a couple of choices really. You can beg for it or you can pay for it. But not getting it is not an option. You know that you have to get data. And now, of course, you can lean on suppliers to say, hey, you know what, we've been in relationship for some time and we need this data. And you can actually just get in there and help them understand it. You know, we spent a lot of time with fabricators showing them how to mine their own data in their own systems. So you got to be helpful to them, but basically you got to get that data somehow. So that sort of comes down to, what's your relationship with the suppliers. But you know what, if you offer them money for it, they'll probably say yes. And whatever you pay for it, it's cheap, I promise you.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that we've been able to do is, when we work with owners or EPCs or contractors to show them their own data, there's definitely benefit to the owners of understanding where you are in the project. But we've been able to show efficiency savings, productivity increases by using AWP. So being able to have the data to report back and measure how things are going, we can, because we have the data, prove that AWP works. So one of the things that we've done at O3 is work with EPCs and contractors to really show how they can set themselves apart. There's a lot of companies that are now either preferring or requiring or even mandating advanced work packaging projects now. And so we've been able to help some of our clients show that not only can they demonstrate that they know what AWP is and that they deliver it, it helps them win contracts and win bids in some cases.
Yep, and we will see that pan out over the next 5 years. We will, yep.
Okay, and then we've got time for maybe one more question here. So what is the difference between an API and a webhook?
So I actually had to do a little digging to try to figure out, whenever I was putting together the presentation and I got with my technical team and tried to understand what a webhook was, because that was a new one for me as well. So what I learned was APIs are request-based, meaning they operate from requests from a third-party application. So O3 might request data from a certain system, like a materials management system. But the difference is, and to use a real-world analogy, an API would be like if you repeatedly called a shoe store and asked them every day, did they have your favorite shoe in stock? And you would constantly call and ask them, do you have the shoe in stock? Do you have the shoe in stock? Do you have the shoe in stock? A webhook is more like asking the store to call you when the shoes come in stock. So it frees up a lot of time between making calls for data that may not be available, and it instead pulls the data when it becomes available. And the main difference is a webhook doesn't need to give a request to a response, while API demands a kind of a two-way thing. So O3 actually supports both, but we've seen some really cool advantages to having a webhook in place just to reduce the amount of communications happening.
Well, hey, that's really good to know, Mandy. I know I burned a whole pile of time calling shoe stores. So.
Well, I mean, it happens. It happens to the best of us.
Great. So we might be able to squeeze one more question in here. And it says, can you share success stories to integrate data between EPC and owner? 3 key elements.
So I have a doozy that we experienced on a project some time ago where we were working with an EPC, and they basically sort of resisted the idea of sharing their data until we got it into the format that that Mandy talked about. We gave them a report back that showed them how they were performing, and they didn't even know, they didn't have that amount of data and control over their own system. So when they got the data initially, they thought it was some sort of a project management process, an overseeing process. But when they got the data, they were like, oh, hey, that allows us to manage our own process way better and see it. And of course, the owner at that point was like, hey, these guys are on top of it. I can take a back seat. So the owner sort of backed off a little bit. They weren't pushing the EPC, and the EPC with that data managed their environment a lot better. So, you know, basically, as Mandy pointed out earlier, that data was already out there. It just wasn't organized so that somebody could make sense of it. So anyway, that was you know, one of our freebies that we got from a project when we start to organize data so that people could see what it meant. So.
Yeah, I think from an O3 success story early on, when we introduced constraint management, you know, in a lot of cases, owners like to say, oh, that's, you know, the EPC's responsibility. They need to manage, it's their project, they manage it. When we started tracking the data, we learned that some of the constraints, a lot of the constraints were actually owner-based constraints. So instead of going to these you know, kind of finger pointing meetings where it's like, well, you're not doing this or you're not hitting that date. You know, when you dig in and you look at it, you may find out that it may be a permit hasn't been released or something that needs to happen on the owner side that was actually keeping the EPC from doing their work, and that wouldn't have been uncovered before. So, you know, I think one of the things that I like to remember is whenever you start making decisions based on data, it's not, you know, like I mentioned before, it's not a hunch, it's not a hypothesis. Like everyone sees the same data. Yep. And it allows you to make a decision that's more fact-based and removes the emotion and the he said, she said. It's just, that's the facts. Let's make a decision and let's start putting that energy into problem solving instead of finger pointing.
Great answers. Okay, so that looks like all the time we're going to have today for questions, but be sure to follow up with us if you have more. We'd be happy to answer anything you have in detail. And you can reach us at, you can reach O3 at www.o3.solutions, or you can contact Mandy at o3.solutions. And then for Insight AWP, you can contact Jeff at jeff.ryan@insight-awp.com, or you can visit them online at insight-awp.com. And again, we will follow up with you as best we can based on any questions you had from today. So with that, I thank you again for attending. And as a reminder, we invite you to join us for next month's webinar, which will address organizing data and using data attributes to support work packaging with a 3D model. So thanks again for attending, and we hope to see you again next month. And thank you to Mandy and Jeff for putting on a great presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Tori, so much for hosting.
You're welcome. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Mandy.
Mm-hmm.